Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the bell jar,
Oh, yeah.
and specifically Chapter 7.
Yeah.
This chapter, it really throws us into the protagonist's emotional world. I
Yeah.
mean, she's grappling with love, societal expectations, what it even means to be a woman in that time.
Yeah, and I think Plath really doesn't shy away from showing us
Yeah.
how disillusioned the protagonist is becoming.
Right.
And you can really feel her, like, wrestling with these big questions about happiness and fulfillment.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like those traditional paths to happiness,
Right.
marriage, career, the whole nine yards. They're
Uh,
just leaving her feeling emptier than ever.
Yeah.
What stands out to you as the most striking example of this?
Where I think it's hard to miss that really powerful fig tree metaphor. I
Yes.
mean, it's not just about her inability to choose a future. It's about the sense that those choices are rotting before she can even make them.
Right.
That feeling of being boxed in, of having limited options just because she's a woman. It's
Sad.
incredibly potent.
And that image of those figs just withering on the branch,
Yeah.
it's like a visual representation of all those paths just being closed off to her.
Exactly.
And then you layer on top of that her academic struggles, the feeling that she's no longer the star student she once was.
Right. And it's important to note this isn't just about grades. It's about her questioning the very definition of success
Yeah.
that's been kind of imposed on her. She's like that racehorse in a world without racetracks. So much potential,
Right.
but where can she even run?
That's a great point. And that brings us to these sort of contrasting relationships that we see
Yes.
with Constantin and Buddy Willard.
Right.
And they paint such vastly different pictures of masculinity.
Yeah.
And they both seem to influence her evolving views on sex and relationships.
Yeah, it's like she's being pulled in two completely different directions.
Mm.
On one hand, you have Constantin, this charming, worldly interpreter
Yeah.
who represents a kind of sophisticated European ideal.
Right.
And then on the other hand, you have Buddy,
Yeah.
whose views on women are so deeply rooted in that traditional,
Yeah.
almost clinical categorization.
It's almost as if Buddy embodies those societal expectations that she's rebelling against.
Right.
Like his whole attitude toward women,
Yeah,
like classifying them into those he would marry and those he would sleep with.
exactly.
It just reinforces that double standard that she finds so suffocating.
And it's fascinating how her own views on sex are caught in this kind of tug of war between societal pressures
Yeah.
and her own yearning for agency.
Right.
You know, that In Defense of Chastity article her mother sends her
Yes.
represents that external pressure to conform,
Right.
but her internal desire for experience, for freedom,
Right.
is pushing back against that.
It's like she's trying to reconcile these conflicting messages.
Yes.
Trying to figure out where her own desires fit into this complex equation.
Right.
And then she makes this rather cynical decision, doesn't she?
Yep.
That choice to embrace a double life, to sleep with someone simply for the experience.
It really speaks volumes about her desperation to break free from those societal constraints.
Yeah.
It's a way for her to claim control and agency
Right.
in a world that seems determined to dictate her choices.
And the setting of that potential encounter with Constantin, his apartment overlooking the river, it's almost as if Plath is deliberately creating this hyper-romantic atmosphere.
Yeah.
But even with that backdrop, her internal monologue reveals so much anxiety and uncertainty.
And what's striking is the way Plath portrays the tension between her outward actions and her inner turmoil.
Yeah.
She's going through with this plan,
Right.
but her doubts about her own desirability, her fear of judgment, it's all simmering beneath the surface.
And then there's that moment when she observes him sleeping.
Yeah.
It's such a quiet, intimate scene, and yet it's filled with such conflicting emotions.
That scene, to me, speaks to the complexities of her desires.
Mm.
On one hand, there's this fleeting sense of connection, like a glimpse into a potential future. But at the same time, you sense this underlying unease.
Yes.
A recognition that this encounter might not be the liberating experience she's hoping for.
And ultimately, it isn't.
Right.
He doesn't make a move, and she's left with this feeling of disillusionment,
Yeah.
of being alone with her thoughts and anxieties.
And it's interesting how, even in his inaction, Constantine reflects that societal privilege she's railing against.
Right.
He can afford to be detached, to keep clear of such attachments,
Right.
while she's left to navigate the consequences of her choices in a world that judges her far more harshly.
Which leads us to that heart-wrenching scene where she connects her recurring leg pain to Buddy Willard.
Yes.
It's like a physical manifestation of her emotional turmoil,
Yeah.
a reminder of past hurts and her own tendency towards self-destruction.
That connection she makes between the leg injury and Buddy, it hints at a deeper story there, perhaps some past trauma. It's a chilling reminder that her pain goes beyond the surface,
Yeah.
that her internal struggles are manifesting in these physical ways.
And then that final thought, that chilling realization.
Oh, yeah.
No, I broke it myself. I broke it on purpose to pay myself back for being such a heel.
Wow.
It's just a devastating admission of self-blame, a
Yeah,
glimpse into that dark spiral of her own making.
absolutely.
I mean, that line, it just hits you right in the gut. You know, it feels like such a pivotal moment in the chapter.
Yeah.
A real turning point where her internal struggles begin to manifest in these, like, really self-destructive ways.
Yeah, and you can't ignore the symbolism of that injury.
Right.
It's not just physical pain.
Right.
It's this representation of her broken spirit,
Right.
a sense of being fractured
Yeah.
by these conflicting desires and societal pressures.
It makes you think about all the other ways that Plath uses symbolism to highlight those pressures, especially when it comes to domesticity.
Yeah.
The way she portrays food and cooking, for instance.
It's so deliberate, isn't it?
Yeah.
The way she describes her own lack of culinary skills, her complete rejection of that traditional domestic role.
Yeah.
It's almost like a refusal to conform to those expectations
Yeah.
that are so deeply ingrained in her world.
Right. And it's a powerful statement considering how much emphasis was placed on women's domestic abilities back then. Remember how she even points out her mother's and grandmother's expertise in the kitchen?
Right, and it's presented as this generational cycle.
Yeah.
This expectation that women should find fulfillment in cooking and cleaning and all those domestic tasks.
Right.
But she sees right through that, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She recognizes it as a trap, a way to keep women confined to the sidelines while men get to experience the more exciting aspects of life.
Yeah, and it's not just cooking, is it? She talks about all these things she's terrible at. Dancing, singing, even balancing. It's almost as if she's taken society's expectations of femininity and then just judged herself harshly for not fitting that mold.
What's fascinating is the contrast between those activities she rejects and the things she actually longs for. Skiing, horseback riding.
Right.
These are activities associated with freedom and adventure things.
Yeah.
Things that were typically enjoyed by men in her time.
It's as if she's simultaneously rejecting traditional feminine roles while also feeling inadequate for not fulfilling them. It's this constant push and pull,
Yeah.
this internal conflict that she just can't seem to escape.
And it's made even more complex by her observations of the other women in her life.
Yeah.
Mrs. Willard, for instance.
Right.
She's like the embodiment of that domestic ideal.
Yes.
She spends her days cooking and cleaning,
Right.
even weaving those intricate rugs that ultimately get trampled underfoot.
Oh, man, that image of that rug.
Yeah,
It's such a potent metaphor, isn't it?
it is.
All that effort, all that creativity, just to be walked all over. It's like a visual representation of how society diminishes women's contributions, reducing them to mere domestic objects.
Like a bleak observation.
Yeah.
But it's one that clearly resonates with our protagonist.
Yeah.
She sees that same pattern playing out in her own mother's life.
Yeah.
A woman who clearly had aspirations but ended up relegated to a life of domestic servitude.
Which makes her decision to embrace a double life, to emulate the men she sees around her, all the more understandable.
Yeah.
She's witnessing this stark contrast between how men and women are allowed to experience the world,
Yeah.
and it's clearly fueling her rebellion.
She sees these men having these secret, unburdened experiences while women are expected to remain pure and innocent.
Right.
It's that classic double standard that she's determined to challenge,
Yeah.
even if it means putting herself at risk.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Even in her attempt to break free from those societal expectations, she ends up replicating them.
Right.
Her decision to sleep with Constantine isn't necessarily driven by genuine desire, but rather this idea that it's something she should do, to be more like a man.
That's the irony, isn't it? She's still operating within that same framework of societal norms,
Right.
even as she tries to rebel against them.
Yeah.
And that internal conflict, that tension between her own desires and those imposed by society,
Yeah.
that's what makes her journey so compelling.
We see that conflict play out so vividly in her encounter with Constantine. There's this initial excitement, this anticipation of a transformative experience. But it's quickly overshadowed by anxiety, self-doubt, and this underlying fear of judgment.
Plath's use of sensory details in that scene is masterful.
Oh, yeah.
We're drawn into the romantic setting, the soft lighting, the sounds of the river.
Right.
But then we're pulled back into her internal world, her worries about her appearance,
Right.
her fear that she won't measure up.
And then there's that moment when she observes him sleeping.
Yeah.
It's so quiet, almost peaceful. It's like a glimpse into a possible future, a
Yeah.
world where they could be together.
But even in that moment,
Yeah.
you sense this fragility, this distance.
Yeah.
The way she describes him as insubstantial, as if drawn on fog,
Yeah.
it speaks to the fleeting nature of that fantasy, the realization that this encounter might not be the answer she's searching for.
And of course it isn't. He doesn't make a move. And she's left feeling even more disillusioned, even more alone with her thoughts.
It's heartbreaking because even in his rejection, Constantin embodies the male privilege that she's fighting against.
You're right.
He can afford to be nonchalant about sex,
Yeah.
to keep clear of such attachments,
Right.
while she bears the weight of societal expectations and the potential consequences of her actions.
It's that contrast that really drives home the point, doesn't it?
It does.
He gets to navigate the world with this sense of ease and freedom,
Right.
while she feels trapped and suffocated by these invisible barriers.
And that's why her decision to embrace a double life feels more like a desperate act of defiance than a genuine expression of her desires.
Right.
She's trying to play by the rules of a game that's rigged against her.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately leading her down a path of self-destruction.
Which brings us back to that powerful line at the end of the chapter.
Yes.
No, I broke it myself. I broke it on purpose to pay myself back for being such a heel.
Oh, wow.
It's an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
A self-inflicted punishment for failing to live up to both her own expectations and those imposed by society.
It's a chilling reminder that the protagonist's journey is far from over.
Right.
She's still trapped in that bell jar, suffocating under the weight of those societal pressures.
Yeah.
But it also feels like a turning point, a moment where she's starting to acknowledge her own role and her pain.
Yeah, it's almost like she's holding herself accountable,
Right.
punishing herself for stepping outside those narrowly defined roles.
Right.
And it makes you wonder how much of her pain is self-inflicted versus how much is just like a direct result of the world she's navigating.
Well, that's the heart of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That interplay between individual choices and societal pressures.
Right.
And I think what makes the bell jar so enduring.
Yeah. So relevant is that it captures that zeitgeist of that era.
Right.
Those incredibly rigid expectations placed upon women in the 1950s.
It's like the novel is holding up a mirror to that time, reflecting all those limitations and double standards that women faced.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it in her struggles with career aspirations,
Right.
societal expectations around marriage and motherhood,
Right.
even in her own sexuality.
Every single one of those struggles speaks to those very real constraints women faced.
Yeah.
And what's even more striking is how Plath contrasts those experiences with the men in her life.
Yeah.
Think about Constantin, for instance.
Right.
He just seems to glide through the world with a sense of ease and privilege that she can only dream of.
It's like he has this inherent freedom to pursue his passions, travel, engage in relationships,
Right.
without facing the same level of scrutiny or judgment that she constantly encounters.
Yeah,
It really underscores that stark double standard that existed back then.
absolutely. It was a time when men were encouraged to be ambitious and adventurous.
While women were expected to be docile, domestic,
Right, yeah.
and always subservient to men's needs.
And the tragedy of it all is that our protagonist has internalized these expectations.
Right.
She's constantly judging herself for not fitting into those predefined roles,
Yeah.
even as she rebels against them.
Yeah.
It's this constant internal battle that just tears her apart.
Her desire to be a writer, for example.
Right.
It's presented almost as a threat to her femininity.
Yeah.
Remember Buddy's suggestion that she'll lose her creative spark when she has children?
Oh, yeah.
As if motherhood and intellectual pursuits were mutually exclusive?
It's such a clear example of how society tried to limit women's potential, pushing them into these narrow boxes that denied them any real agency or fulfillment.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's what makes her decision to sleep with Constantine so heartbreaking.
Right.
It's not truly about liberation. It's about trying to emulate male behavior in a world where men hold all the power.
That's the ultimate irony, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even in her attempt to break free from those societal norms, she's still trapped within that same system of power and control,
Yeah.
and it ultimately leads to more disillusionment,
Right.
more pain.
And you can't forget about her encounter with Eric,
Oh, worry.
that Yale student who boasts about his experiences with a prostitute,
Yeah.
yet simultaneously idealizes the purity of women he loves.
Right.
It's such a jarring juxtaposition, a disturbing reflection of that hypocritical and objectifying view that so many men held towards women back then.
It speaks to that limited, binary way of seeing women,
Yeah,
either as pure, untouchable beings to be placed on a pedestal
right,
or as objects for sexual gratification.
right.
And our protagonist, caught between those two extremes,
Yeah.
ends up feeling utterly lost and devalued.
It's no wonder she breaks down, both physically and emotionally.
Right.
I mean, you see it in her insomnia, her recurring leg pain, even her fascination with that In Defense of Chastity article. It all points to her deep-seated anxieties about sex, relationships,
Yeah.
her own place in the world.
And I find it interesting how Plath uses that leg injury as a symbol for this internal conflict.
Yeah,
It's both a physical manifestation of her emotional pain
right.
and a reminder of her self-destructive tendencies.
And that final line, "No, I broke it myself. I broke it on purpose to pay myself back for being such a heel."
Ugh.
It just drives home the depth of her despair and self-blame.
It's a chilling reminder that her journey is far from over,
Right.
that she's still trapped within that bell jar,
Yeah.
suffocating under the weight of those societal expectations.
Yeah.
But it also leaves us with a glimmer of hope,
Right.
a sense that she's starting to confront those internal demons, to acknowledge her own agency, even in her pain.
This deep dive has been a whirlwind of emotions, hasn't it?
It has.
It's been illuminating, thought-provoking, and at times incredibly heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But what strikes me most is how relevant these themes still feel today.
Oh, absolutely.
Those struggles with societal expectations,
Yeah.
the pressure to conform,
Yeah.
the search for identity and agency. It's something that so many people, not just women, can relate to.
Absolutely.
Sure.
The Bell Jar is a timeless masterpiece that continues to resonate with readers across generations.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most powerful takeaway from our deep dive today.
Yeah.
As you continue to explore this novel
Right.
and the world around you, remember to question those ingrained assumptions,
Yeah.
to challenge those limitations,
Right.
and to always, always fight for your right to define yourself on your own terms.
That's a beautiful note to end on.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Bell Jar.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.